Welcome to the IVF Journey with Dr. Michael Chapman, the podcast for couples who struggle with infertility and want to fulfill their dreams of becoming parents. In this podcast, you'll learn actionable strategies to deal with infertility from Dr. Michael Chapman, or Prof as he's affectionately known. Prof is the co-founder of IVF Australia and is a leading Australian infertility specialist who has helped over 3,000 couples realise their dreams of becoming parents. To access previous episodes packed with ideas, solutions and tips that actually work, head over to Dr. Chapman's IVF podcast on iTunes. You can also ask questions by contacting Dr. Chapman's rooms on 1-800-111-483 or by emailing him michael.chapman@ivf.com.au.
That first cry of a baby born after the long journey of IVF remains one of the most beautiful experiences in the world. As an obstetrician and an IVF specialist, I've had the privilege of experiencing this over many thousands of times in my long career, but I still remain moved by each baby's first cry. It signifies the end of a long journey and the beginning of a new life. This is Professor Michael Chapman, co-founder of IVF Australia and host of the IVF Journey podcast. Thanks for tuning in. To access all the previous episodes, head over to my website, www.theivfjourney.com, and select IVF Journey Podcast from the navigation menu. You'll also be able to find the various services that we provide at IVF Australia. Today we're going to talk about something that keeps coming up both in the scientific literature and in the lay literature, and that is the accusation that too much IVF is being done, that patients who could get pregnant in other ways are being treated with IVF. Much of this debate comes from European work where their strict criteria in relation to IVF force patients to wait longer periods of time before they move into IVF. Holland is a classic example where state-funded IVF is available, but only after you've gone through other forms of treatment, or even if you are under 30 and there is no explanation for your infertility, you're expected to wait at least 12 months beyond the initial 12 months of trying. So we're now up to 2 years of trying, and sometimes even beyond, because their data correctly shows that over time, a percentage of patients will get pregnant without any intervention. And that's probably fine in women under 35. To wait a bit longer and let nature work is a very reasonable approach. In Australia, the average age of people coming to fertility clinics is over 35. So that work from Europe really doesn't apply to the majority of our patients. And I think even in our under 35s, particularly in today's society where we plan our lives, we decide when we're going to buy a new car, we decide when we're going to buy a new house, and we decide that we're going to have a baby in the next month or two. And when it doesn't happen, we seek help, and we expect help to be provided that will give us our dream at the earliest opportunity, our dream of a baby when we want it. So when patients come to see me in the clinic, I must say it is hard to convince them, having them already been trying for at least 12 months, to tell them to go away for another 12 months and that will do nothing because nature might cure it. In that second 12 months of trying in unexplained infertility in women under the age of 35, there is a 50% chance of nature curing the problem. But it means that at the end of another year, there are 50% who haven't conceived and are frustrated and sad that things haven't happened. So I must say I find it difficult to persuade patients to accept expectant management. There are things that we do that enhance fertility. Flushing through the tubes certainly seems to have a positive effect on pregnancy rates, but certainly not improving them vastly. A study that we did looking at women who'd been through hysterosalpingogram or a hycosi showed that 25% got pregnant in the first 3 months after the procedure, which is significantly better than nature after 12 months of trying. So I can look couples in the eye and quite justifiably say, you don't need any treatment for the next 3 months. Let's see how we go. Let nature help us. But after 3 months, most couples want to do something. Now, what is that something? My approach is to use low tech as a starting point. We might try stimulating ovulation. Even if women are ovulating, maybe giving them drugs to stimulate it a little bit more might make a difference. So drugs like clomiphene or letrozole, they have their risks because multiple pregnancy is more common with both of them. But maybe it'll be the difference between being pregnant or not with very significant low tech. The next step up is intrauterine insemination, still not IVF, but carries a 15 to 20% chance per cycle of producing a pregnancy. I tend to use injections to stimulate ovulation, although the evidence that it's any better than taking tablets is debatable. If that fails after 1 or 2 or 3 cycles, then we move on to IVF. And I think that's the point at which IVF is valuable. Now, I'm talking about patients certainly under the age of 38. Once you get past 38, it's important to get on with life. Get on and get pregnant because your eggs are starting to deteriorate. Pregnancy rates fall the longer we leave it. And expectant management in this group of patients will do harm rather than good. This group of patients in the next 12 months of trying have less than a 40% chance of naturally conceiving. And the year after that, halving again. So we need to do something. Whether you use tablets to stimulate ovulation for a couple of months, IUI for a couple of months, IVF certainly will bring forward the potential for a pregnancy. So what I've been talking about is unexplained infertility. And there is a debate as to how early we should move to IVF in that particular group. I hope I've given a rational approach to this problem. But 60% of IVF is totally justified. Male factor infertility will not produce a pregnancy, or if it does, very rarely. And IVF, in that scenario, gives exactly the same pregnancy rates as a man with normal sperm. The technology of ICSI and growing embryos in optimal conditions in the laboratory produces great success, and nothing else will produce that type of success. The next group in that 60% are women with tubal problems, blocked tubes, damaged tubes, endometriosis. Again, these patients have very low chances of conceiving naturally, and therefore IVF is totally justified in their case. IVF is expensive, IVF is painful, IVF is emotionally very taxing. So no one rushes into IVF, and no doctor rushes patients into IVF as a first-line treatment unless it is necessary. So I'm more than happy to take on critics because I think we do a good job in Australia at deciding when is the best time to move on to IVF. Our rates of IVF, despite a heavily subsidised system through our Medicare, is still producing usage rates which are well below many other countries in the world. Japan, Israel, the Scandinavian countries have higher IVF rates than we do. So I think we've got the balance right.
And don't forget that you can access all the previous episodes by going to our website, www.theivfjourney.com, and select IVF Journey Podcast from the navigation menu.
Thank you for listening to the IVF Journey with Dr. Michael Chapman, the podcast which helps couples negotiate their way through the IVF journey, all the way to parenthood. You can also ask questions by contacting Dr. Chapman's rooms on 1800 111 483 or by emailing him michael.chapman@ivf.com.au.